Hello and welcome to the York Creators Podcast. My name is Ben Porter, and each week you can join me as I chat to someone from York's creative community. This week's guest is Sarah Jackson. Sarah is the creator of Sarah Ann Draws, which focuses on simple, honest and sustainable design for print, textiles and other small businesses. With over a decade in textile design, engineering and product development, and then deciding 2020 was the year to travel the world whilst drawing on the way, she has found herself in York with some more long-term, engaging and sustainable ideas. In this episode we discuss what it was like running a remote business while travelling in the early months of the year, how it enabled focus and the ability to bring in elements of lifestyle design. We chat about the Swedish term lagom, meaning in balance or enough, and how being in a new city forces you to be clear on your purpose and mission. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So 18 months ago you were living in a different country and you were working as a product development engineer at IKEA.
Yeah.
And I don't know too much about the internal workings of IKEA as a company, but from the outside that appears to be a pretty cool job and somewhere that you could probably do quite well if you were to climb the ladder, so to speak. So do you want to tell me a bit about some of the things that were going through your mind at that point and what ultimately led you to pursue a different path?
Yeah, definitely. And you're totally correct. It was a really good company, and I think it still is, talking to the people that are still there. And lots of great people there and lots of great opportunities, interesting products, things going on and lots of different projects you could work on and things. It started in the middle of the forest, and that's how it started and why it started, because obviously it's all the trees and all the materials were there. The next biggest city to it is about an hour and a half away, and unless you're built for living in a really small village with everybody else that also works in the same company, you live quite far away. So I ended up kind of commuting for 2 hours about each way every day. And there were quite a lot of train issues as well while I was there. And in the end, that just got to be a bit too much for me, to be honest. I was doing well, I think, and I could have gone in another direction in the company, which would have been really great as well. But I think I just knew I wasn't the best version of me there. Okay. Because I was tired all the time from the travelling.
So it's mostly a lifestyle decision then?
Yeah, it was more a lifestyle decision than anything else. Like, if it is a very good company to work for and with lots of good people and lots of good support and good values and things as well. So
yeah. So how did you end up there? Because I assume you're not Swedish.
No, I'm not Swedish. I studied textile design a number of years ago in Huddersfield. And I'd been working for 6 years in a variety of different roles for a company called Chimera Fabrics, who make fabric for buses and trains and offices and schools and healthcare. I ended up working in product development for them, and I'd done engineering and things, and I was just ready to try something a little bit different. And predominantly it was trying to work in a different country and to experience different culture and learn things from there. And when I went with my husband, who is also quite creative. We went together and we both wanted to try something that was a little bit different to what we've been doing before, I think. And the job that I did there was quite similar to the job that I did in Huddersfield, but the different types of people that you met and the different types of challenges that you had, I suppose, in a really, really big company were quite different, and I wanted to try and learn from them. And I certainly did. I don't think I'd have ever stepped away from a role because of lifestyle, possibly, the way you describe it, which it probably is quite a good way of describing it, before moving to Sweden. And I think there was a lot of emphasis on balance from a personal perspective and from a mental perspective, I think, for how people work and how they live their life. There's a word, lagom, which is kind of, there isn't a direct translation, but it means enough. And it's sort of, you to kind of have that enough of different things in your life and a balance, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of it being in Sweden, but the one thing I'd lost was the work-life balance, which I kind of felt I had before when I was working here.
And it must be something that comes to mind quite quickly, particularly if you work in design, because you're constantly thinking about trying to solve problems.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice them if you've got them in your own life
totally.
As well as in your work.
Yeah, definitely. As an engineer and a designer, I suppose I've always sat somewhere in the middle, and I don't think anyone is truly a designer or truly an engineer. I always think there's a balance. You have to be both. Like you said, you have to solve problems. And when one thing is like having such an influence on everything else. When you can't solve that problem, there isn't a solution, or you maybe look, could I move house and would that be better? Or could I try this and would it be better? And actually there isn't a solution to that. That is very frustrating. I think it's prepared me quite well for this year, probably, when all of us are in that situation where we have a lot of things out of our control.
So let's talk about this year then, because you left IKEA, you're now in York, but that wasn't the original plan, was it?
No, that wasn't the plan either. So when I left, we moved back to England for a while and stayed with family for a couple of months, where I did some remote working for IKEA then. And at that point, the plan was to start doing something a bit more creative. I hadn't necessarily got a totally formed idea. I knew I wanted to do some more drawing in some way or another. I'd kind of picked back up some of my drawing skills from doing a drawing a day as a New Year's resolution in 2016. And then I kind of kept doing it and kept spending longer each day drawing. So it became sort of maybe an hour every day I was doing a drawing, and I could see progress and feel progress there. And that was something I wanted to take into whatever I was going to build myself. But also at that time that we moved back from Sweden, also took the decision that we were going to travel. So we wanted to travel and work at the same time. My husband's job allows him to live anywhere within Europe and still do the job that he does. And
he's a photographer, isn't he?
He's a photographer, yeah, for a sports organisation. And when we moved to Sweden, they came to the agreement he could continue to work with them, but live away. So that move to Sweden also allowed us that flexibility now as well, or from then. So we decided we were going to travel around some different countries and stay for a few months. So we wanted to try and experience what the country would be like, different places in Europe, work in them, in the places we were staying in, also in and out of coffee shops, experience a bit more of the life going on around, which when you're doing something creative, that inspiration and those things you see around you, the energy around and things like that are what inform a lot of the things you do. And I think especially this year, that's also been a little challenging, is that we don't get all of those influences we normally get that make us our most creative, probably. So yeah, that was the plan, to start to travel. That was delayed a little bit due to a health issue, which is now fine, but we stayed in England for another 6 months. And then where I did start my business and had some structured time to start plotting out kind of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And then we did start travelling at the beginning of this year. And we didn't get very far, but we got a little way. So we spent a bit of time in Ireland and a bit of time in Hungary, in Budapest. And in March, like everyone else, we had to, who wasn't necessarily where they might live normally, we had to make a decision. Where do we go and what do we do? And at that point, I was in Sweden and my husband was in England, and all of our stuff was in Budapest. So we didn't know what to do. But the first thought was we knew we wanted to be somewhere together. So we ended up staying with my husband's family in Northern Ireland, which was great. We were in the middle of a field, felt very safe, not many people around, which obviously during this year has been good and useful and helped, I think. And at that point, we were able, both of us, I think, to have some quite focused time working. So I took a lot of the ideas I'd got from being in Budapest and kind of made them a bit more structured. Some of the drawings and the designs, the ranges that I'd started to develop or had developed, I was able to bring together in a bit of a better way. Also took a lot more time to focus online, because obviously that's where everything really needs to be, and still now and going forward, it's where things probably need to be a bit more. I do like getting out in front of people. That's probably not my favourite. My favourite bit is the drawing and the creating and the making, but then getting out and seeing people and being with other creatives is also something I think that helps push you forward. But at the moment, obviously that online side of things is more important than anything else. So yeah, that's been a focus.
So tell me about those first few months then, when you're out on the road and you're moving around and you're trying to grow this business. What is it actually like? Because I think a lot of people have this image in their head that they'll be sat on a beach somewhere warm, sipping a cocktail, doing like an hour's work a day, and actually it's like an extended holiday. But I imagine it's not like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not like that. And in January, it was really cold. We weren't definitely not on the beach. The way I started to find a way that I work best, and my focus time I can do kind of, I suppose, repetitive tasks and things you have to do regularly. I can do them in the morning quite well, and would stay in we're staying in Airbnbs and different apartments. So I would stay in there in the morning, work from whatever desk, kitchen side or table we had, or quite often when I'm drawing, I like to sit on the floor. So if there's a little table, I'd sit on the floor and do that. And then normally around the middle of, like, to have lunch, and then normally in the middle of the afternoon is actually the time when I'm not the most productive anyway. And if I think back to when I've been working in companies or anything really, that sort of 2, 3, 4 o'clock isn't really my best time of the day, isn't my most productive time of the day. So
I'm the same. My head will just be on the desk. I'll be like, I'm useless.
Yeah. So getting out and walking around at that time of the day is actually really good. So we could go and do some exploring at those times. And quite often we do that by ourselves. So obviously Nathan had his job and was working his hours, and I think quite healthy for you to have separate times. So we would almost have our work days separately. He'd go out in the morning and come back in and work in the afternoon in the house, but we'd probably sit in a coffee shop in the morning working. Whereas I would have my little break and wander around in the afternoon, and then probably spend 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening sitting and working in a cafe. And I think it's not a holiday, totally not a holiday. You're not relaxed in the same way, but it does allow a little bit more relaxed way of working in some ways, and probably one that works more healthily for you. Like, you do things when you are best to do those things. Doesn't always work, totally doesn't always work. And some days you probably would go and walk around and that would be what you do, but you do also get inspiration from doing that and ideas as well. And to go and be in those places only makes sense if you are spending time in taking in the surroundings as well. Like, working all day every day but not exploring the place you're in, why would you go there? Why wouldn't you just stay and do something a bit more normal? I don't know.
So where were your clients coming from at this point? Did you have all the clients before you went? Were you trying to pick up new clients on the move? Or?
It's a bit of both, really. It probably wasn't the most sensible idea to try and move and start doing something at the same time. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, probably, unless you're doing something that is purely like online or computer based, where you don't need any products or any paper or pens or whatever. Like, I had my basic art stuff with me, but if you looked at my work now and how I like my materials and my printer, all the stuff I use daily now, if I looked at them, I would have no idea now how I would have ever fitted them in the suitcase before. But I think because we went near the beginning, it allowed me quite a lot of time to think and get some things in place. I spent quite a lot of time drawing and creating, developing ranges and things, which actually during the recent months during lockdown, I've not felt as creative in a drawing sense. I think some creatives have gone that way, that we felt a bit more restricted with our creation in lockdown, just because it's maybe not as relaxed or as a release or as calm as it would have been when we were in more normal times. It was also, travelling and working can also be quite lonely. You're not someone going to a hostel and meeting loads of people. You're not in a holiday place where you might meet other people also on holiday. And in January, I don't think loads of people are doing it either. I think quite often can happen later in the year. So it was a time to be quite focused in some ways, because there wasn't other influences. So it helped me build some foundations and now I can see how I've been working on them, but it wasn't really a time where you could build a big client base or get to know lots of people. I think also I've learned that being in a place and being local to somewhere or being somewhere also is really, really important when you're trying to build anything, whether it's a friendship group or a business or anything else. So not having a community, I think, was definitely challenging while we were away. And perhaps if we'd been able to travel a little bit longer, we'd have learnt from the places we'd been in and do things differently in the second place he went to or the third place he went to. But yeah, as it was kind of the first proper place we'd got to before we had to come back or change what we were doing. But right now, York does feel a really good place to be. Like I've lived in Yorkshire before for nearly 10 years, so in Huddersfield and Leeds, so not North Yorkshire, but I have been in the north of England before. I'm originally from Bedfordshire, so moved up when I was 18. And also have family from this direction as well. So it kind of felt a good place to come back to, or near to anyway.
And do you feel being here has changed the focus of your work?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing that it made me really do was find what the creative community was, and also other small businesses that are around. So my drawing style or the products I create are all they all have like sustainability at the centre of them, but they also are quite calm and simple and slightly Scandinavian influences, but the colours that I use are all very calm and quite natural. The materials I use are natural. And that hasn't changed, but I think being in one place and having to really go to introduce yourself to new people, I suppose, and a new community, you have to really go, okay, who am I? What am I doing? What are the most important things I stand for in what I'm doing? And I think I have a lot of clarity. I've had that clarity probably being in York, both by meeting a lot of other people doing creative things in different ways, but also from having that focus time to really be in a place and have your feet on the ground a bit more and go, what do I want to say and what do I want to make people feel with what I'm doing? And I think that's definitely only come since we've been based in York. So yeah.
So tell me about the sustainability element of your work. What were some of the factors which led you to make that be a really important part of what you do?
I don't think as such it's like something that's made me make it a part. I think it's always been a part. And I think by talking with others, and when I've sort of introduced my work to people at different fairs and things like that, that is when it's been the first thing I've said. So I've realised it's the most important, it's an important thing. And obviously anyone making anything, you are using materials. Like if you are continuing to make things, the most sustainable thing to do is not to buy anything, not to use anything. But that's not where we are. I make paper products, which, aren't necessarily the most sustainable thing in the world, but people want them. People are still going to use them. People buy them. And I like to create physical things. I love products. That is where I'm from, whether it's textiles, whether it's something paper-based, whether it's another object. But to make anything, we should all be responsible to make sure that what is going into those things is not causing harm to the planet, I think, or to other people. As a small business, I think it's very hard to have enough. Well, you can ask questions to people that you use as suppliers, and if they say no, our thing doesn't do this, or it isn't sustainable, or it doesn't come from a recycled source, or it's not recyclable at the end, you can't change what they're doing, but you can choose not to buy from that supplier or not to use that supplier. You can choose who you work with. Obviously, I've been in a very large retailer and been on the other side, where there was the power to make a difference. So I work with a conversion of virgin fibres to recycled fibres in fabrics. And you could see a massive change in moving from one thing to another in numbers and millions and things. Obviously now it's one person changing one thing. But if I can do that now, and other small businesses around can also do the same thing, and then consumers, customers also ask for those things, I think it helps all of us in the long run. So I know there's a lot of push, and there has been a lot of push around this year about supporting small, and that is very important. But because something's small doesn't necessarily mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's sustainable. So you have to ask those questions as well.
Because there's always a chain behind even like a small person. Like they could just be getting everything the cheapest price from a wholesaler, which they might be trying to do the best with their output, but if their input's not good, then...
Yeah. And it, like, big isn't bad either. There's loads of people working on making things sustainable. So they might have massive teams of people doing it, and one person that's really clear, and all they think about is that strategy of how do we move things forward. And obviously moving 10, 20, 100 suppliers is really hard and takes a long time. But as a small business, you can do that straight away. And that's something I've realised, I think, that as a small business, you can do on your own. You can make a change. You can make that choice to do something over another thing, or to use something over another thing, or to not to use something. So everything I print is on recycled paper. I try to use local suppliers where I can, where they are using recycled materials, where the inks that they use for printing are vegan or vegetarian. One thing I totally didn't know wasn't, and had to do a lot of research around. So like
there's meat products in, animal products in inks.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So it's like those questions. Obviously, I'm doing loads of learning as well.
Yeah.
But you have to ask those questions, and you really, like, sometimes you have to ask those questions for a few weeks, for a month, to really find out, is this right for me to use and to ask someone else to buy, or want someone else to put in their home, if it's not using the things that are in my values. So I think it's those things are quite challenging, but I think if we work together in small pockets to ask the right questions, and if you are a customer and you're not sure but you'd like to buy from a smaller business, or you'd like to work with a smaller business, ask them the questions. Sometimes we're not great at explaining, like, we do this, 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 and this, and we make sure that we use this, this, and this, because obviously everything you have to communicate, everything you have to explain, everything you make takes loads of time. So it might be something we've maybe not thought about, or something we might have missed, or it might be something we've done. So I think as someone wanting design or art, is worth asking those questions to those smaller businesses.
So it sounds like you've done quite a lot of work in terms of getting your inputs and your materials to a place where you're really happy with them. Let's talk about some of the outputs, some of the things that you make. For somebody who has no idea about what you do you want to give a quick explanation of the kinds of projects that you work on?
Yeah, of course. So I basically draw, design and illustrate, and do that in different ways. So I have my own ranges, which are naturally inspired, so I focus quite a lot on natural designs, also calming things as well. So I have some yoga based designs, I have some based on houseplants, but I also like to celebrate how things are made. So I have some showing kind of the process of making coffee and the process people use to make cocktails and things like that. So I like to use hands and people making things. So I suppose there's two elements there of the kind of designs I do as myself, as Sarah Ann Draws is my business name, I suppose. So I do those. I also, during lockdown, felt there was kind of a bit of a gap of some happiness, I suppose. So I have some bit more playful designs as well, smiley faces, some just happy words, and that everything I do is kind of blank inside, so you can write your own messages, you can send some happy notes, you can send a little smile now and again as well, which I think is as important as having calmness and kind of natural things in your home, which make you naturally feel calmer and more relaxed and a bit more grounded, probably. And then the happier and a bit more fun, playful things as well.
We all need more joy.
Definitely. At the moment, I think more than ever as well. So those are definitely something I'm hoping to build a little bit on next year as well. So that's one side of things that I do. I do some designs for small businesses as well. So I do some logos and a little bit of branding stuff, and I've quite recently worked with a woman that does some Reiki, so healing and things. So it's really nice to work with another brand that also focuses on kind of calming and natural elements of things. Then I am now doing some product development in the background on some more textile-based things again, which I'm hoping to develop a bit further in the new year. And with those, I'm looking at some more natural ways of creating colour. And colour is something I love. I really do love the way colour works. And I used to love the technical side of it as well. How does a dye get onto a fabric? Why does it stay there? What happens in certain lights? Like over time, what happens to it? What happens when you put two different colours together, and how do they work together on different substrates, so different fibres, so whether it's cotton or linen or whatever you're putting it on, what's different about that colour over those things. So I've got some projects working with that, which I've started, and definitely in the new year we'll be spending some more time on. And with those, I'm definitely looking to collaborate, hopefully, with possibly some local people in York and I'm looking to use some waste products around maybe the food and the floristry industries to create some of those colours. So we'll definitely be reaching out a little bit in the new year, I think, to try and develop some of those ideas. And I would definitely love to get a bit more back into working collaboratively with some other people on a variety of different things, and potentially some more kind of workshop-based things as well. So one thing that I used to do quite a lot when I was in industry was working with people, and was when you develop products in a team, you all do different things and you all bring in loads of different inputs and knowledge and background and ideas, some which might seem ridiculous, but actually when you kind of work together around them can make some really cool things. And that is something personally that I found working on my own business. There maybe is a gap for me that I want to be more involved with people to do something collectively. And I think there's definitely a lot of other creative people around York, and hopefully some opportunities to build on some of those ideas as well. And then I'm really hoping to grow the sustainable side of things and potentially share some of the background I have, and the knowledge that I have in the textile side of things, and also help possibly to work together a bit more to be able to make a few more changes. So like I said about, as one person you can't really make a big difference, and small isn't always going to be good, but can we, those of us that are trying to be, can we actually ask some of those questions? Can we look together to make things a little bit better?
So what would be the dream? Like where would you like it to be in 10 years?
I don't think any of us can answer where anything's going to be in 10 years.
No, but where would you like it? Where would you like it to be?
I think definitely I need a balance between doing things by myself and doing things with people. So I would love to have and be in a clear position with all of the ranges that I have, and have grown them a little bit more than I have so far. But obviously I'm only kind of year and a bit in, so wouldn't expect to be like doing loads and loads of things right now. But if I could get a little bit into some more maybe smaller independent retailers with some of the stuff that I make as well, that'd be great. But then I would definitely like to have a side working with some other creative people as well, or whether it's in research projects or it's in creating something together, or it's a combination of both, then that would be great. And I think being able to share some of the knowledge as well that I have from the textile side of things and the sustainable side of things, and also the product development side, really, because I love a process. Really, I like things to be quite structured and follow through a process, and then bring creativity into it. So building some of those things together, I think would be great. And I think today as well, none of us are going to do what we do forever. Jobs change a lot and all the time, especially this year for many people. So having a selection of different things that you can do, and being flexible and being able to change, and also being lucky enough to have the opportunity to be able to make those choices to change if you need to, and to be able to do the things you like doing. That is kind of the good picture, or where I would hope things can be in a number of years.
Sounds like a good place to aim for. So if people want to find out a bit more about you, where do they go?
You can go to my website, which has been nicely refreshed recently. So I've spent lots and lots of time trying to change it the last few weeks. So if you head over to sarahandraws.co.uk, that's Sarah with an H and Anne with an E, you can find me there. Or if you like to see kind of what I do sort of on a more daily basis, then I'm Sarah Ann on Instagram. But as there's millions of Sarahs in the world, I also have a lot of underscores in there as well. So perhaps we can stick my name in somewhere so people can find it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much.